might already know that I'm a big fan of solo games, and you might have also heard me say that I consider gamebooks and solo RPGs to have a shared culture and lineage. And this book, Morkin, is such a great example of that, combining gamebook elements and retro-modern RPG design to create a complete and self-contained solo experience. But before getting into that, I need to talk about video games. Because Morkin is actually a licensed game based on the 1984 ZX Spectrum title Lords of Midnight. Now, I don't think I was aware of it at all before I looked at Morkin, but apparently Lords of Midnight was quite a groundbreaking game at the time, and had both role-playing and strategy elements to it along two parallel storylines. But even if you haven't heard of Lords of Midnight, you'll probably be familiar with the story. You have a party of leaders who need to go their separate ways. The meek young hero needs to journey into the enemy stronghold and destroy a powerful magic item that he's uniquely resistant to, one that the Dark Lord uses to bend the world to his will, while the more experienced characters make alliances and rally armies to defeat the forces of evil. It's Return of the King, basically, but with more snow. In the original Lords of Midnight, there were essentially these two stories running in parallel, but here we're focusing down on the journey of our young hero Morkin as he braves the lands of midnight, infiltrates the Tower of Doom, and destroys the Crown of Winter. I was so impressed when I got this book. I know it might seem like a simple thing, but printing in silvery white on black paper is immediately striking, setting the tone of its setting, the land of midnight, as the winter solstice draws near. It uses thick, rough-textured paper that really gives it a sense of quality too. The silvery negative image art really stands out, and the camera might not pick this up very well, but it kind of shimmers as you move, which is probably a more effective gimmick with white on black like this. You can divide the book into 4 quarters. The first getting you started with character creation and rules. The second is the events and quests section. That's the part with those choose your own adventure style gamebook elements, where most of the story happens. Then there's an illustrated bestiary with lots of that silvery art, and then finally the tables section for generating the content. Now, something else that came with my copy is a larger A3 map of Western Midnight, which you'll probably need because one downside of this format is that the map in the back of the book is really quite difficult to read. Most importantly though, it sounds great. The Ice Crown was forged by a sorcerer called Griffalon the Wise before he betrayed the king and became known as Doomdark, Witch King of Midnight. Powered by the deep cold of winter, the Ice Crown is the source of Doomdark's power and emits an aura of fear across the land, letting him wage a campaign of terror against the free people of Midnight. A campaign he intends to decisively win during the winter solstice in 30 days' time. The Council of the Wise has gathered at the Tower of the Moon in the Forest of Shadows, and they have a plan to resist Doomdark. The leaders amongst them, Luxor the Moon Prince, Corleth the Fae, and Rothron the Wise, will seek alliances and rally armies to face Doomdark in the field. Except you won't see any of that, because you are the second part of that plan. Being the half-fae, half-human son of Luxor, you have a resistance to the ice fear that others don't. So while the armies maneuver in the south, drawing Doomdark's hordes, your task is to journey north, to take the Ice Crown from the Tower of Doom in the coldest depths of midnight and destroy it. For our core resolution mechanic, we have a tried and tested D100 roll under system. So you have a list of skills with an associated value between 20 and 80. When the book asks you to make a check, you roll a d100, and if the result is equal to or lower than the value of the skill you're using, then you succeed. Roll-under systems like this have a clear benefit in solo games, in that the difficulty level is baked into every roll and tied to your character's abilities rather than decided by a GM. Character creation is really about tweaking these skills. You're playing as Morkin, of course, so customization is a little limited. Once you've assigned those scores, your journey starts at the Tower of the Moon in the south here. The adventuring day gets split into 4 turns, and on each of those turns you can take an action: travel, hunt, forage, fish, approach an NPC, explore a site, rest, or make camp. Travel is the most involved action. How far you can move depends on things like the weather and the starting terrain, because every hex on the map has either a corresponding terrain or a site noted by these symbols. Some of those sites are unique, with specific NPCs or story elements, but most are procedurally generated. So to move out of a hex, you need to decide on a direction and make an orientation check with a bonus from the weather or terrain. If you fail, you get sent to a neighbouring hex instead. When you enter an unexplored hex, you check for an event. For standard terrain hexes, there's a 1 in 3 chance of an event. If you get one, you then roll on the events table in the corresponding terrain type and look it up in the events section of the book. There are more than 150 events, with some chaining into each other to form mini-quests. Some might change depending on your previous actions too. For example, if you've done event number 128 and befriended Icethra the Ice Troll, she might appear and lend her aid in other events afterwards. This event system is the brilliant core of this book, letting you discover and interact with the story without having to write it yourself, but also without the linearity of a game book. As well as these events, sites have their own things going on. Caverns and ruins are particularly interesting. You roll an associated quest when you discover one, and then use a fairly in-depth procedural generation system to explore, keeping track of the layout on a map sheet until you find the quest room and whatever it was you were looking for inside. Caverns are essentially mini-dungeons, and ruins are a bit more expansive. They might span multiple levels and have secret rooms to discover. Now on turn 4, you'll likely be using the camp action, consuming some rations and marking the day off, before probably failing your camping check and having something horrible happen during the night. And you'll need to keep track of the days because you have 30 of them to destroy the Ice Crown before Doomdark claims victory over the Free People of Midnight. And as you progress through the days, the Ice Fear level increases, which affects things like your chances of getting an encounter with Doomdark's minions and the willingness of NPCs to join your quest. Combat in Morkin can be a bit of a slog, a war of attrition dominated by regular failure, high HP and low damage. When I started my game, my Morkin had 45 in the melee skill, which isn't a terrible starting score. The lowest is 20 and the highest is 60, so somewhere in the middle. And this is a percentile roll-under system, so I assumed when making the character that a 45 means a 45% chance to hit. But it doesn't, because not only do you have to roll under your skill to hit, you also have to roll over the enemy's defense stat. And not only do you have to hit, but you also have to overcome the enemy's damage absorption. My first combat encounter was against 2 Targs, who have a 30 defense stat, which turned my 45% into a 15% chance. Or technically 19% because crits always hit. But Targs also have 1 damage absorption on top, taking my chance of dealing any damage with a one-handed weapon back down to 16%. So after dozens of rounds of rolling, I'd hit twice, but only dealt 1 damage to their combined 81 HP. Meanwhile, there were 2 of them. They each had a slightly better chance of hitting, around 34%. So by the time I had dealt 1 damage, they had dealt 40 to me, so I ran away, which puts you on the previous hex having made no progress. The enemies stay ahead of you with full HP, so I had to go around and hope my orientation check didn't force me to go straight back into them. To be fair, this was my first combat encounter and I wasn't spec'd for fighting, so I was curious, what if I had maxed out my melee and defense skills and taken a better weapon? Even then, it would have taken me around 69 rounds on average to defeat these 2, and it would take them around 25 rounds to reduce me to 0. This does get a little better with companions in your party. Having more party members gives you more opportunity and reason to use these different tactical options you can select by spending action points. They also have their own hit points and give you a small buff. On the other hand though, most encounters scale with your party size, so fights can still be quite tough. Talking of which, that scaling happens by adding more enemies to the encounter. Encounters often refer to an n plus something number of mobs. Except, in my first event, the book hadn't actually told me what n was yet. I guessed it was probably the number of characters in the party, but I wanted to make sure. But it took me a good 20 minutes to confirm that, because the explanation for n was above the encounters table at the very end of the book, and my encounter had come from a completely different section, the events. All of that compounded to a little bit of a frustrating experience to start me off with. But despite that frustration, I can still see the beauty in this design, and that beauty is in this game's completeness. Solo RPGs can often demand a lot from you creatively, asking you to write from prompts, or be your own GM, and one advantage gamebooks have is that they don't generally ask that of you. You only need to make decisions, and the story unfolds on the pages. The downside of that is that gamebook stories can't have the scope and freedom that an RPG does. It can only have a branching linear story with limited interactivity. But what Morkin excels at is massively expanding that interactivity, creating a game that feels so much more open and free than a gamebook, but with a complete story you can follow without having to write it yourself. I feel like aspiring solo RPG designers could learn a lot from Morkin. The way these events and quests weave together into stories, the unique enemies and the clear objective make a game that doesn't rely on the player to do extra work to experience a complete story. And personally, I'd love to see these kinds of detailed, pre-prepared story elements used in a more modern framework, because without meaning any disrespect to the legacy of Lords of Midnight, its story is an old-fashioned one, lacking a lot of the nuance, creativity and diversity that I would expect from modern fantasy fiction, and for me, that holds Morkin back. When I first saw Morkin, it was being crowdfunded, and judging only by the cover and little snippets of text, I assumed it would just be another dark fantasy OSR game. I found out later I was wrong to make that assumption. And when the book arrived, I was so impressed with what I saw and really eager to try it out. So it's a shame I didn't enjoy it more, but I'm fairly sure fans of old school dark fantasy will get something out of this. The impression I get is that Morkin is a faithful, loving, warts and all adaptation, guided by a deep respect for the source material, with all its fantasy cliches and very old-fashioned storytelling. It's a difficult game, it's an old-school game, and even though it's not my kind of thing, it's a brilliant game. It's difficult to believe we're coming up on 10,000 subscribers now. I don't have anything planned to mark that number. I didn't expect to see it, to be honest. YouTube is not always friendly to people covering little indie games like this. And yet, I really do think that people want to hear about more than just that one game. So, thank you. Thank you for watching, for sharing, for liking, subscribing, and all that stuff that I always feel so awkward talking about. And of course, a massive, massive thank you once again to this month's Ko-fi supporters. Times are tough, the world sucks, and no one should ever feel obliged to tip someone like me, but if you feel able and eager to, please head over to ko-fi.com/cozyrpgreviews. My to-review pile is getting pretty big again. I'm never certain what I'll be looking at next, but I'm super excited about trying out a few of these games. So, until then, happy adventures.